talk about skilled migrants, and basically focus will be on women. And I try to go through the data and explain about what is their employment rate, basically, as one of the proxies for the labor market outcome of these skilled people in Australian labor market. So here is the content for this presentation. Start with background, and then I go through the data and some talk about the methodology and the descriptive analysis that I've done so far. And also I will touch the primary findings and the conclusion. Okay, background for the research. As many of you already know that over the past 2 decades, Australia has focused on attracting more skilled people, skilled migrant. So to reduce the gap which exists in Australian labor market. And so it adopted a point system to select primarily skilled people who are based on their age, education, qualification or education, and their English language ability, the skill occupation, or if there are some people because of their outstanding talents as like researchers or academics, or even the business skills. So what it says to us basically means that if the people are going to be selected through these characteristics, so there is a shift toward economic selection without considering migrants' ethnicity and gender. But what research shows so far is like, yeah, there is a research shows that after this change in skill migration selection, most skilled migrants, they had a higher employment rate and a better labor market outcome, basically, I should say, in Australia. But also research found that this improvement was not always the case for non-English speaking background people. So, and they faced some barriers participating in the basically work and in labor market. On the other side, we know that there is a gender gap exists in Australia. And despite all those regulations and the support for the employment equity for women, so that's why some scholars considers female migrants as being a double disadvantage in the labor market, because they are migrant and because they are women. So in case when we are talking about non-English speaking background, female skilled migrant, so there should be a greater disadvantage in the labor market. So that's why it took us to this question to see that to what extent labor market outcomes of these skilled migrants are affected by their ethnicity and or their gender. So source of data for this study is from Australian Census and Migrant Integrated Dataset for 2011 and 2016, which basically this dataset is created by linking two sources of migrant information coming from Australian Census of Population and Housing from ABS, and the other one is permanent migrant settlement data from Department of Social Services. It gives us a cross-sectional data for permanent migrants in Australia, and access to data was through Table Builder, which is a online tool facilitated by ABS. That it give access to authorized users to get access to microdata and create tables based on those information that they need for their or the variable that they need for their research. Actually, it's a really fun tool, but it has its own limitations. Okay, so in order to choose our explanatory variables, because we had access for a huge source of information, but we needed to narrow it down those variables that we need for our research. We considered, since the focus of this research is on this group of people, basically, who are all skilled migrant people coming to Australia. So that made us to focus on these people's place of birth, age, qualification, English language ability, and skilled occupations. And these are apart from the place of birth, the rest are those requirements for skilled migrants to enter to Australia. Okay, so before we go through the detailed information of each of those variables, I just wanted to have a look through the overview of the employment outcome of these skilled people in Australia. Um, just to let you know some basic information, that the data is coming from over 300,000 skilled migrants, skilled primary migrant in 2011, and nearly 600,000 skilled migrant in 2016. So so we have the data here I'm talking about is basically about all the skilled migrant, or I should say primary skilled migrant, who entered Australia in either of those years. And also, it's important to know that we are focusing only on primary applicants. Primary applicants are those people that they applied for this skilled migration scheme. However, they can come with a family, but the rest of the family members are being considered as secondary applicants. So we didn't focus on their outcome for this specific research. And okay, you see that here we have 9 categories as like coming in as different name as a regions in this table, which is basically they're classified classifying skilled migrants' place of birth. But because we are following the classification, ABS classification of countries, that's why we are following the same the same categories in our study. And another thing are seeing here is like there are 3 different colors that highlights as a yellow or green or red. This is what we did for simplify our analysis, because talking about 9 different regions would be a little bit difficult and confusing in some point. So we thought it's better if we group our migrants in 3 categories. It helps us better explaining about their outcomes. So what I did, I calculated the average range for both years to find out the range from their employment rate. And so we have yellow, which are the best group. So migrants from this group, usually they end up having a best labor market outcome with higher employment rate and lowest unemployment rate. And the green ones, they are the middle group. And red is the worst group. That's usually they ended up having a lowest employment rate and highest unemployment rate. But what we can see from the table, it shows us that those in the yellow group, they have a better labor outcome compared to the those in the red groups. And since the focus is on female migrant, so you can see that in both years, female migrant had a lower employment rate. Has a higher employment rate in the yellow group, and those in the red group, they have a lower employment rate. And also, One important thing that we can see from this table is a migrant, even the male migrant in the worst group, they have lower employment rate compared to female migrants in the best group, which is very interesting for our finding. And we can see that the highest unemployment rate belongs to red group, and more so for Middle East and North African migrant. So there is a consistency between the finding from the 2011 and 2016 um, um, employment rate. However, there is a slightly change and an improvement in the 2016, but still we see that the categorizing a skilled migrant is same as what we did for 2011. And I have Yes, and again here we can see that the unemployment rate for worst group is highest, and more so for Middle East and North African migrants. And okay, now we can move on to our finding for the considering one of the variables, which is age. So we categorize them in three different groups because we're considering people who are as a skilled people and who are working in the labor market, or even they're aiming to find a job in the labor market. So we focused on the age group 15 to 64. And however, for the skilled migration visa, migrants should be below 45. So that's why the data for below 45 is more, I should say, realistic, because this group of people they are as a active and ready to work in the labor market for as when they are a newly arrived migrant. And okay, as we can see here, again, we go with the same finding as we had before. Like those in the yellow group, which are the best group, they have the highest employment rate. Compared to those ones who are in the worst group, that they have the lowest employment rate. And also in both years, we can see again that for male in the worst worst group, their employment rate is lower compared to those in the best group, which is same in 2016 as well. Okay, and there's some findings that I mentioned. So in both years, female migrant had lower employment rate compared to males. And in both years, migrant in the best group mainly have the highest employment rate compared to other groups. And also those in the worst group, they had lowest employment rate. And males in the worst group, they had lower employment rate compared to the best group. And yeah, in both years and in all age group, we can see that skilled migrants from the Middle East and North Africa, they had the highest unemployment rate compared to other groups. This is the finding from the other table that I didn't put here. And female skilled migrants from MENA, they had the highest unemployment rate to all. Education, some information from the data that I found is female migrant in all groups, and in both years they had higher education qualification by having a bachelor or above degree compared to males from their regions. And also the data showed me that migrants from Northwest Europe or Sub-Saharan Africa, who are both belongs to the best group, and migrants from Oceania and Antarctica, who are from a middle group, they had the lowest proportion of non-school qualification holder in both years and for both genders. And migrants from America and MENA, and they had the highest proportion of non-skilled qualification holders with a bachelor degree and above in both years and for both genders. So considering this introduction in mind, let's see what the data comes from. Oh, and one more thing is like the example that I want to put here as for the last point is female migrant from MENA. And as you can see here, more than 90% of those skilled migrants from MENA, I mean the female ones, they had education above bachelor. So the finding here shows us that again, no matter what the level of the education that these migrants have, still those in the top group, who are the best group, they have higher employment rate compared to the rest. And those in the worst group, they have the lowest employment rate. But we know from the data that those like at least migrants from Middle East and North Africa who are from the worst group, they had the highest proportion of skilled people with a degree of bachelor and above. And this is same for, yeah, we can see it here, especially for the female. We mentioned that more than 90% of them have a bachelor degree and above, but we can see that they have the lowest employment rate compared to all other female skilled migrants in the country for 2011. And for 2016, there was a slightly improvement, but still, as you can see, skilled female migrant from Middle East and North Africa with highest proportion of education, they ended up having the lowest employment rate in the country. So again, the conclusion for these two tables shows us that for both years, again, female migrant had a lower employment rate compared to male from their group, in all group and for all education level. And also in both years and in all educational level, most males from the worst group had a lower employment rate to females in the best group. And also in both years, migrants in the best group mainly have the highest employment rate compared to other groups. Migrants from worst group had the lowest employment rate and highest unemployment rate compared to other group in both years. And the worst outcome was for MENA migrants and especially females. And the outcome was regardless of their higher educational achievement. So in both years and in every region, but another thing that we can see if we go back is that in all groups, we can see that those who have a higher education, they have a better employment outcome. So for migrants who have a below bachelor degree, the employment rate is lower compared to those who are highly educated. English language proficiency is another variable that we consider also, although it is a self-assessed, the collected information for the English language is self-assessed. But because there is a really strict regulation for immigration policy to consider to allow people to apply for a skilled migrant visa by taking some of those internationally recognized English tests. So we should consider this variable as one of the factors for our analysis. The basic one information that I found from the data shows that regardless of migrants' place of birth, most primary skilled migrants, by most I mean above 97% of them, had a very good level of proficiency in speaking English. So they were either being English speakers or they were proficient in speaking English in both years and for both genders. However, it wasn't the case for those people from Northeast Asia who belong to worst group. For them, it was around 80% of migrants had a good level of English proficiency. And let's see what was the finding again here. As you can see, in 2011, the data shows again, those in the best group, again, they have a better labor market outcome or employment rate, I should say, compared to other groups. And again, we have the worst outcome for migrant in the worst group, and especially for Middle East and North African people, and the female migrant, I mean, from there are at the bottom of the table. And again, it was the case for 2016. However, in 2016, there was a slightly improvement for red group, as you can see here. And this comes mainly because of I think one of the reasons for that is because of their higher labor market participation rate, because I have information about that that data as well, and it shows that they have a higher rate of participation. So the finding from the English language proficiency, again, it says that in both years, female migrants had lower employment rate compared to males, and also in both years, male from the worst group had a lower employment rate to most female in the best group. However, in 2011, female migrant from the best group who speaks English only or proficient in spoken English had the highest employment rate to other group, while again in migrant from worst group, they had the lowest employment rate. But in 2016, those in the middle group, who speaks English only, they had the lowest employment rate. So some finding from this basic analysis show us that there is a hierarchical order in skilled migrants' labor market outcome in Australia. So we see that no matter how these people's human capital characteristics are, but they ended up being best group always at the top, middle group at the middle, and the worst group at the bottom of the table. And it showed us that skilled migrant in the worst group with similar or higher, even sometimes we saw that it was a higher human capital characteristics to other groups, they experienced a lower labor market outcome. And so I think it's obvious that we can see that migrants' place of birth has a stronger impact on their labor market outcome. And all the tables show us that female skilled migrant had a lower employment rate compared to males from their regions. So it was an improvement, slight improvement in 2016 compared to 2011, but still the gap is there. And also in both years, males from the worst group mostly had lower employment rate to females in the best group. So which showed us that for migrants in the worst group, the impact of their ethnicity or race is more than their gender. So yeah, this is the basic finding from these tables. I think it's yes. Thank you so much for being with me today. Yeah, I'm here for if there is any questions or any comment. Yeah, welcome. Thank you so much.